For 3 episodes, we have talked about the plant, where it came from, how it's classified, what it makes. But there's a question we have been dancing around, and it's the strangest one of all. Why does a compound made by a plant do anything to a human being at all? Why should a molecule from a wheel on the Tibetan plateau have an effect on your brain? The answer genuinely surprised scientists when they found it. Your body already makes its own versions of these molecules. You have a whole internal signaling system built around them. The plant compound is not foreign magic. It's a key that happens to fit a lock you are already carrying. That system is called the endocannabinoid system, and today we are going inside the body to meet it. Quick note first, this is physiology and pharmacology, how the system works, not medical advice, and I am going to be careful, stick to what's actually established and not stray into claims about treating anything. So, here's the fun part. This whole system was discovered in reverse. It started with the plant back in the 1960s. Chemists isolated THC and worked out its structure. So, by the 1980s, the obvious question was, how does THC actually work? What does it grab onto inside us? The answer came around 1990 when researchers identified a receptor in the brain that THC binds to. They called it CB1. A few years later, in 1993, they found a second one, mostly out in the immune system and the body's periphery, CB2. Receptors, if you are not familiar, are basically molecular locks sitting on the surface of cells. When the right key slots in, the cell does something. But that discovery raised a much wider question. Why on earth would the human body be walking around with dedicated receptors for a compound from a plant? Evaluation doesn't build locks for keys that doesn't exist even, and that's the twist. The receptors were not there for the plant, they were there for us, which means the body had to be making its own key. So researcher went looking, and in 1992 they found it, a molecule your own body produced that fits the same receptors as THC. They named it anandamide, from the Sanskrit word for bliss. A second one called 2AG turned up in 1995. These are your endocannabinoids, endo just meaning made within. So follow that chain. A plant compound led scientists to a receptor. That receptor led them to a molecules we make ourselves, and those molecules revealed an entire signaling system nobody had known was there. We found one of our own body system by studying cannabis. So what is the endocannabinoid system really? Three parts we have. First, the receptors CB1 and CB2, the locks sitting on cells throughout your nervous system, your immune system, and beyond. Second, the endocannabinoids themselves, anandamide and 2AG, the keys your body makes. And here's a key detail: unlike a lot of signal molecules, they are not stored up in advance. They are made on demand, right where and when they are needed, and then broken down quickly afterward by dedicated enzymes. It's very local, very responsive system. Third is those enzymes, the one that build the endocannabinoids and the one that clear them away once the job's done. And what's the job? The best way to describe the endocannabinoid system is as a regulator, a kind of dimmer switch for other systems. It doesn't run the show directly, it sits alongside processes like mood, appetite, pain signaling, memory, immune response, and sleep, and it helps nudge them back toward balance. Scientists call that balance homeostasis. When something dialed too high or too low, the endocannabinoid system is one of the tools that body uses to bring it back to the middle. It's less like an engine and more like a thermostat, and it's an Asian. This system is not some quirk of humans. Versions of it are found right across the animal kingdom, going back hundreds of millions of years. It's deeply built in. Now we can finally answer the question of why THC and CBD feel so completely different, which we flagged back in episode 3. THC works because it is a mimic. Its shape is close enough to your own anandamide that it slots into CB1 receptor, especially in the brain. That direct hit on brain receptor is the intoxication. TSC is a key cut to match a lock you already had, and it fits well enough to turn it. CBD is a totally different story, and this is the crucial contrast. CBD does not really activate that CB1 receptor the way THC does, which is exactly why it's not intoxicating. Instead, it works more indirectly. It influences the system in subtle way, interacts with the range of other targets in the body, and appears to affect how your own endocannabinoids are handled. The full mechanism is honestly still being mapped out by the researchers, but the headline is simple. TSC turns the lock directly. CBD works around the edges. Same plant, two molecules, two completely different way of engaging the same system. And notice this is the mechanism underneath everything we said about chemotypes last episode. A type 1 THC dominant plant and a type 3 CBD dominant plant are not just different numbers on a label, they engage this internal system in fundamentally different ways. Now, I have to put up a caution sign because the endocannabinoid system has become a magnet for overclaiming. Here's the pattern you will see online. The endocannabinoid system regulates everything, therefore, cannabis fixes everything. That's not how any of this work. Yes, the system is involved in a lot of processes, but involved in regulating is a very different system from cannabis treats. The fact that we have this system explain why cannabis compound do something it does not by itself prove what they are good for. What actually solid is the mechanism I have described, the receptor, the endocannabinoids, the enzyme, the role in balance was still being worked out carefully, and thorough clinical trials is the therapeutic picture. And where the evidence has met the bar, regulators have approved a small number of specific cannabinoid derived medicines for specific defined conditions, which is a world away from broad wellness claims. So hold both things at once. The system is real and important, and most of the sweeping health claims build on top of it and still ahead of the evidence. So put it all together, we did not evolve a receptor for cannabis. Cannabis just happens to make a molecule that fits a signaling system we already had. That system, the endocannabinoid system, is a set of receptors, the body on demand messenger molecules, and the enzymes that manage them, all working as a kind of balancing mechanism across the body. THC works by directly mimic one of those messengers. CBD works indirectly and does not cause intoxication. And while the system is genuinely important, it's all signal most often hyped things in this whole subject. So treat the sweeping claims with care. We have now covered the plant and the biology. Next time we will bridge to the real world, how you actually turn this plant into a consistent regulated product, cultivation, extraction, and what pharmaceutical grade really means. That's episode 4. Thanks for watching.